federal judge calling out President Trump over the Epstein investigation. After weeks of unrelenting pressure from the MAGA base, the Trump administration told supporters it was taking action, playing up its decision to push for the release of Epstein grand jury transcripts. Well, tonight, Judge Richard Berman is ripping off the fig leaf, denying the Trump administration of its attempt to appear transparent. The judge saying there was nothing really in those transcripts. The ruling reads this, in part. The instant grand jury motion appears to be a diversion from the breadth and scope of the Epstein files in the government's possession. The grand jury testimony is merely a hearsay snippet of Jeffrey Epstein's alleged conduct. He calls it a snippet. And that snippet, we now know from this opinion, is just 70 pages out of what he says in his opinion is the 100,000 pages that are right now in the Justice Department's hands. That is 0.07% of the information that is available, and that includes the testimony, when you're talking about the grand jury transcripts, of just one witness, an FBI agent who the judge has said had no direct knowledge of the facts in the case. Berman went on to note that it is the Justice Department that could release the vast majority of the Epstein files without needing permission. Files that we know mention Donald Trump's name multiple times. He has not been accused of any wrongdoing regarding Jeffrey Epstein, but it does make you wonder, why are they still then holding out? For weeks, you've been told that the president and his administration wants transparency, full stop.
President Trump has demanded full transparency from this.
The Trump administration is committed to truth and to transparency.
Truth and transparency, except that is not what they're offering. Instead, Trump has been dangling grand jury transcripts really as the end-all be-all. Just listen to the way he first called for the release of the files. It was July 17th, weeks after his base started pounding the table wanting more, refusing to let the Epstein investigation go. And Trump writes this, based on the ridiculous amount of publicity given to Epstein, I have asked Attorney General Pam Bondi to produce any and all pertinent grand jury testimony subject to court approval. This scam perpetrated by Democrats should end right now. 2 minutes later, Attorney General Pam Bondi, the loyal soldier, responded online saying this: President Trump, we are ready to move the court tomorrow to unseal the grand jury transcripts. Trump's decision to drag this out, it is not going over well with some of the very people who helped Donald Trump get elected, like podcaster Joe Rogan.
I heard as a Democratic hoax.
Yeah, I don't think that's true.
But
well, it's certainly not a hoax if you go to jail. Certainly not a hoax if Ghislaine Maxwell's in jail too. So like, she's in jail for sex trafficking.
Kristen Holmes out front live at the White House for us tonight. Kristen, today gave us yet another sign that this story is not going away as long as the administration refuses to release the Epstein files that they can.
Yeah, Kate, and they are really hoping that this story will die down. Now, they have been pleased relatively for the last couple of weeks because it hasn't been the dominating headline. We know that they had a very hard time actually getting a grip on this story, particularly because so many of the people calling for the release were his own supporters. So they spent most of their time on the defensive. And when you talk about it not going away, this is just one aspect that's not going away. We know that on Friday, there's likely to be a tranche of documents related to the Epstein case that is given over to Congress, the House Oversight Committee. And that's just the beginning of those documents from the Department of Justice. Now, how those will be handled by the Republican-led committee, that's obviously a big question. But I can tell you there is nothing that James Comer does that he doesn't brief the White House on and have conversations with the White House about before he does anything. That is something that we know. We know they're in constant communication. He is, of course, the leader of the House Oversight Committee. So we'll see how this goes in terms of transparency. But one thing to note, they were calling for transparency. They were at one point talking about potentially releasing the transcripts from Todd Blanche's interview with Ghislaine Maxwell. It has now been weeks. They have not released that. Now, I was told in part that was because they were waiting for this story to die down. But again, now we're seeing more documents potentially coming to light on Friday. We're hearing from this judge. This is a story they want to go away, but it's just not going to go away because there are so many people, including, again, President Trump's own supporters, who want more information, who want more transparency, who want to read some of these documents around the case, Kate.
And it is their words that are coming back to haunt them for months and months now of what they said they wanted to see done. And now it is in their power to do, and they are not. Kristen, thank you. Out front with us now is Democratic Congresswoman Summer Lee. She is on the House Oversight Committee Kristen was just talking about and was a driving force behind subpoenaing the Epstein files from the Justice Department. Congresswoman, thank you for coming in. So what do you first make of this judge's ruling rejecting the Trump administration's bid to release these grand jury documents and the way he talked about it?
Yeah, we're not surprised by that, right? At the end of the day, we have a way of getting all of the information, all of the details that the American public wants. That truly bipartisan. There are Dems and Republicans who want it, and that justice demands, and that's through the DOJ file. That's the DOJ. We subpoenaed them. They are able to release and should and have been commanded to release all of the files, complete, full, unredacted, and that includes the underlying evidence of this case. So that would be included in our subpoena. So this actually doesn't impact the subpoena. The subpoena is where we're going to get all of our answers.
Yesterday was the deadline for the Justice Department to comply with the subpoena. That has come and gone, which, without any files, please tell me if you've received them quite yet. What, if anything, have you actually heard from DOJ is actually going to happen?
Yeah, so, we heard the same thing that you did. Comer, of course, issued the subpoena. And in it, there was this 2-week deadline, right? The DOJ comes back this week and they say that they're going to start to slow trickle in some of the information, some of the files starting on Friday. Now, what we know is, of course, that's obstruction, right? This is a further obstruction of justice, right? The subpoena gave a deadline. It gave a strong deadline, and it was called for, again, full, complete, unredacted file. So their unwillingness to release that all at once, it continues to just raise more questions. More questions. What are they trying to hide, right? What is the big cover up, and why are they not able to do this, right? Pam Bondi herself said she had the files weeks and weeks ago. So we know that they exist. We know that they're complete, and we know that they could just hand them over. But they keep drawing this out, which, mind you, is causing further damage to the hundreds of victims who are having to relive this, who are seeing this play out in the news, who's watching their president, the FBI, the intelligence community, all seem to be a part of a massive cover-up at the level of, quite frankly, Watergate.
But do you have any idea who is deciding what your committee does and doesn't get? Who is deciding what is redacted, how it is redacted, and what documents are going to be coming over in this first, one of my least favorite words in the world, in this first tranche? That seems critical in terms of what you're going to get. And is the public going to see it right away?
Yeah, I mean, we recognize that this is a Trump-led DOJ. We knew that going into this, right? We recognize how influential he is over his federal government, over his executive branch right now. So we always knew that there was a strong possibility that the DOJ, that Trump, that all of the people around him would try to, obstruct, try to, basically push this off or demur, all of that. We expected that. Who's in control of it, we don't know. But what we can say is that the subpoena was very specific in its language. That subpoena asked for unredacted files. It was voted on properly in the federal law enforcement subcommittee with bipartisan support. So the only names that should be redacted in these files that they are to give over to the Oversight Committee are the names of victims. Anything more than that, they are going against the subpoena. It is a legal order, and they're breaking it.
Congresswoman, Friday's going to come. Please come back on when we need to know what the next move is.
We'll let you know. Of course, we don't expect the public to get them immediately, but when we get them, we'll let you know, and we'll keep people up on this.
Congresswoman Lee, thank you for your time.